Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm LJ if you're new here. So today's video is going to be on eyeshadow mistakes to avoid, okay? We're going to be covering how to avoid this, okay? Now, I know this looks a little crazy. I know nobody's applying the eyeshadow like this, but this is just a collection of mistakes that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. And I'm going to show you guys on this side how to avoid this mistake. So if you're interested, let's get into it.
Okay, LJ, welcome to a channel where it's poppin'. Welcome to our YouTube.
Alright, before we get started with the video, I do want to put out a disclaimer out there that this video is not intended to tell you how to do your makeup, okay? There are no rules to how you should do your makeup. Some of these tips are just meant to be helpful, maybe to some people that can pick up one or two things that could be helpful in their routine. So on this eye, I'm going to show you the mistakes and I'm going to demonstrate how it would look like if you did make those mistakes. And on this eye, I'm going to show you guys how to correct or avoid those mistakes and how you can fix it. So mistake number one is not priming your eyelids. I know eyeshadow primer can be one of those things that is overlooked. Maybe you feel like you don't need it, maybe it's a waste of money, but any makeup applied on the skin has to have a good base in order for the makeup to blend well, to look flawless, and just last a long time in general. If you don't prime your eyelids, you'll be mixing eyeshadow with oils on your eyelids, which will make the eyeshadow application really hard to blend. There are many different types of eyeshadow primers that are out there, but I have 4 of my favorite over here. So the first one is the Urban Decay Primer Potion. This one is a very popular one and I really like this for my eyelids, and I feel like it's really good with all types of eyeshadows. If you want something more affordable, I would suggest the NYX Pigment primer base. This is really good for shimmer eyeshadows and metallic eyeshadows if you're looking for a cheaper version. And then if you're also looking for an affordable one that can go with all different types of eyeshadows, I would recommend the P. Louise eyeshadow base. And then lastly, we have the Fenty Beauty eyeshadow base. This one is very similar to the NYX primer base and it's really good with metallic and shimmer eyeshadows. If you don't want to use an eyeshadow base specifically, you can use a concealer, which is what I usually use. I just find it easier to prime my eyes with concealer. If you are going to use a concealer, you definitely want to make sure you're using a matte formula, because of course you want to take away the oils from your eyes so that when you do apply the eyeshadow, it blends really well. So a matte formula concealer on your eyelids will get rid of the oils, making it a nice smooth base and easy to apply the eyeshadow on. All right, mistake number 3 is not understanding your eye shape. So it's very important for you to know that you can't just do an eyeshadow look that you see somebody doing and you guys have 2 different eye shapes. It's just not going to work. I used to make that mistake all the time until I realized that I have hooded eyes and I cannot do the same makeup looks as somebody who has rounded eyes. So you have to understand the type of shape that your eyes are. For instance, I have almond shaped eyes, so the inner portion of my eye goes down and this part goes up, shaped like an almond. I can't do the same look as somebody who has round, big eyelids because it's just not going to work. So mistake number 4 is not diffusing harsh lines. So the key to blending is really just diffusing harsh lines. That's what blending is. If you see a harsh line on your eyeshadow, you want to blend it out. So I'm going to show you guys on this eye how I usually used to do it. The palette I'm going to be using today is the Morphe 35F eyeshadow palette. So first I'm going to pick up this shade right here, which is the black shade. And you definitely don't want to start off by just placing a dark shade right on your crease area and using a lot of that pigment. If you do this, this will be really hard to blend and it's going to be too much. So you definitely don't want to start off with like a super dark shade. You want to start off with a shade that's closer to your skin tone. So a shade that would be closer to my skin tone would be this shade right here. So picking up this shade, so I like to hold the brush on the bottom and just go in a windshield wiper motion, slightly just placing that eyeshadow and really trying to blend it out. So this is usually the transition color. The transition color is the color that transitions each shade on your crease. So what I do is I place it on my crease and then I blend it upwards towards my eyebrows to make sure that I don't see that harsh line around the eyeshadow. The reason why you want to pick up a small amount is you want the eyeshadow to blend really well, and you want to build up the pigment. You don't just want to place it on there then blend it out, because sometimes it can be too much and you can't take away what you've already put on there. So as you can see, this brush is really easy to blend. It allows me to really bring the eyeshadow really nicely close to my eyebrows, and it diffuses really nice, and it's not too stiff on my eyes, so it gives me a good blend. Versus this side where you just pack the eyeshadow, you can see the harsh line around the eyeshadow. This is way too dark. This would be hard to blend, and on top of that, because my eyes are oily because I didn't prime them, it just stays put. It does not blend. All right, next, after I apply that shade, I like to go into the next shade, and so the next shade will definitely be darker than this shade. Like I mentioned, you definitely want to work your way up so you're not putting too much, or you're not going in with a color that is too harsh. So the next shade I'm gonna pick up is this black shade right here. So I like to pick up a little bit, like literally a very small amount of this shade, because it's black. You don't want to put too much. You want to dust off the excess, and taking that shade, I like to focus right on the crease area. So I'm working first, starting on the outer portion of my eye, and I'm just packing that on there. Once I pack that on there, I'm gonna go in with the M507 brush, which is the sharp tapered brush, and I just go in and blend that out. Like I mentioned, this brush right here is a precision brush, so it's very much precise. So it's going to allow you to really get in that crease area and really blend the eyeshadow. So as soon as you place that eyeshadow there, you pick up a little bit more, you build your pigment, place it on there again, and then you go back in and you blend it out. And I like to use a clean brush. That is key to blending. It has to be clean. You have to use clean brushes. If you have one brush, just clean it and pick up different eyeshadow shades, but please make sure it's clean so that it gives you a beautiful blend. And so I'm just lightly bringing this in towards the inner portion, trying to blend it out, and I'm going back and forth with the M506 brush and the M507 to just blend them out to give a nice gradient effect. And I'm going back in and picking up a little bit more. If you want to make it smokier, you can pick up more and just build it up to your liking, to the amount that you actually want. So once you've applied that black shade, the most important thing is to go back with the eyeshadow brush that you used for the first shade to blend out the second shade. That made a major difference in my eyeshadow application once I learned that. So using that M506 brush, picking up a little bit of that first pigment, I'm going to use that shade to blend out this black shade, but I'm only focusing where those two eyeshadows meet, which is slightly above my crease area, bringing it also towards the inner portion because I placed a little bit of that black shadow there. And so as you guys can see with this eye, there's definitely a transition from this reddish brownish shade to the black shade that gives it a little bit of warmth. It gives it a gradient effect versus this side where you can just see that black shade just sitting there. It doesn't look like it's blended. You can see that first shade that I applied. So it's very important to make sure that you're transitioning from a softer shade to a darker shade. This black shade can be like a dark brown shade if you wish, or it can be whatever shade that is slightly darker than the first shade that you're applying, depending on the makeup look that you're going for. All right, so the next mistake ties into the mistake of using the wrong brushes. So on this eye, to apply that eyelid shade, I'm gonna use a blending brush. First off, this is going to pick up the pigment and it's going to go under your eye. Especially if you've done the base of your eyes, it's going to affect that. So you definitely don't want to use a fluffy blending brush for placing eyeshadow on your eyelids. So instead what you want to do is you want to use a flat brush. This one is also by Morphe, but it's a bit smaller. But if you have bigger eyelids, I would say use the M167 brush. This one is perfect if you have a little bit more space on your eyelids. You can use a shimmer shadow or you can use a metallic or a metals. Just all depends on the type of eyeshadow look you're going for. Or you can even put a matte shade. So once you pick up the eyeshadow shade, you want to dust off the excess. And the reason why you want to do that is you don't want to have too much fallout falling underneath your eyes. Or you can use a setting spray to spray the brush. You allow the pigment to stick onto the brush. You definitely want to focus only on your eyelid area first. Place that pigment right there. And the reason why we use a flat brush is because it's very precise on the eyelids and it only places the eyeshadow on the eyelids. It does not move it above the eyelids to mess it up, like around this area right here. It will only focus focus on the eyelid area. And what I do is whatever is left on the brush, I like to just kind of go a little bit above my eyelid area and blend that out. And this allows you to really diffuse those harsh lines. And so I like to go in and pick up a little bit more and just sort of build the pigment. And I also like to place this right between where that black eyeshadow meets the shimmer shade. This will allow those two eyeshadows to really blend together. So you're getting rid of those harsh lines between those two shades. And if you have hooded eyes, you don't want to limit yourself to only placing that shimmer shade only on your eyelids. You can go above your eyelids if you want to, because that will allow the eyeshadow to show more. And so I like to go back in with that black shadow just to blend out the shimmer shade, make sure everything is nice and seamless and everything transitions really well. So on this eye, I'm gonna use this brush that I placed with the black shadow and blend it out to show you guys, if you use that big eyeshadow brush, how it's going to be hard for you to blend out the shimmer eyeshadow shade with the black eyeshadow shade, because it just goes way above where it should be. And as you can see, as I'm blending it out, I'm getting all this fallout under my eye versus this side where you don't really get much fallout and you don't really see any eyeshadow dropping right there, because you're using a flat brush to pick up the pigment, and a flat brush really lays that shimmer eyeshadow on there really nicely. All right, so the next mistake is the inner corner shade. So the inner corner shade is usually placed on there to add a little spark onto your eyeshadow look, but sometimes you can place way too much that it takes away from that spark. Instead of applying the inner corner shade all over this side of your eye, you definitely want to place that inner corner shade just right where your tear duct is, like right there. And then what I like to do is I like to kind of like wipe this off first, and then whatever's left on the brush, I just like to bring it upwards so that it transitions really nicely with that shimmer eyeshadow that I placed on my eyelid. And this will allow it to blend out really nicely. It won't just be sitting there, and it definitely adds a little spark onto your eyeshadow look. So as you guys can see, this side, you can definitely see a transition from the eyelid shade to the inner corner shade. I didn't place it all over the inner portion of my eye. I didn't bring it towards my nose area. I just left it right where the tear duct is. So instead of this might work a little bit better, especially if you have smaller eyes. All right, so the next mistake is using a big brush to apply your under eye shade. So picking up that black shade and going in with a super big brush and smudging it right under your eye, because that's the first brush that you picked up, or it's a brush that you think could work, can really mess up your eyeshadow look, because you can place too much, and your under eye, it should really be simple and smudged out. But because your under eye is very small, you don't want to pick up a big brush. So instead of using this big old brush, I'm gonna use the Morphe M508 brush, which is this brush right here that is perfect for smudging your under eye because it's very small and short. So what I do is I start off with that first eyeshadow shade that I picked up, so that we're also really just blending it out and transitioning also on the under eye, very similar to how we transition on the eyelids. And then once I place it, I like to go back in with the brush and just kind of smudge it, blend it out, make it look nice and seamless. And I like to tie it in to this area right here so that everything is blended. Once I place that, I go in with the black shade. So you can leave it here, or you can just apply that black shade just so that it matches the top portion. I pick up a very, very small amount of this black shade. You don't want to look like a raccoon, okay? You definitely want to pick up a little bit and just place that right on the inner portion of your under eye, right where your waterline is. And you guys see how small of an amount I put on there. The smaller you get, the more precise it'll be. Once I do that, I kind of clean off the brush with the paper towel, and then I just blend it out. I blend these two eyeshadows together to make sure that I'm not seeing any harsh lines. They look nice and smoked out. And so as you can see, this is more precise and it's more smoked out and blended versus this where it just looks like I just kind of like smudged it all under my eye, because using that big brush just does that. So you want to be very precise, very accurate, and you want it to look really blended. In this video, I cover common makeup mistakes that are usually made and how to avoid them. But other than that, I will see you guys in my next video.
KLJ, welcome to a channel where it's poppin'.